Make rag rugs here, sometimes called peg rugs, because you can make them using a peg, an old-fashioned, look at this, an old-fashioned clothes peg. That's those of course used to come free. A broken peg was always useful, but the peg rug or rag rug or whatever you want to call them is made by chopping up all your old clothes. Thank goodness now that they have much simpler fabrics, much easier to work with. But anything almost will do. You cut up your pieces of fabric into strips, and then it's probably easier to see on a blank piece like this. You put the tool in, push it through, and then it has a scissor action so that you can grasp that and pull it back through, and that's it. That's all you have to do to make them. And you get an awful lot of them stuck on. It does take a lot of pieces. It takes time, but it's really cheap, which is good. So originally they would have done it on a backing of old potato sacks, which of course came free. But now we don't get potatoes in sacks, so we have to buy a Hessian. Oh yeah, can I interest you in rag rug making?
No, thank you. I've done it before with Mr. Gurney.
Yeah?
I bought some Hessian and asked people to bring some rags in so we can let people, ordinary Joe Public have a go.
Yeah. Which most kids love having a go. It's something that they can achieve.
Yeah, well, I thought if we just do little squares, they can do something within the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. It takes quite a while, doesn't it? If you're doing that, you'd need to. I mean, I've actually sewn this up. I don't normally.
Right.
I normally just fold them over and hold the edge down till I get there. But if you're doing it with children and they were going to take something away, you'd probably want something that was a bit less likely to fray crazily.
Well, by the time they've got it aimed, they're going to just throw it on the floor anyway, aren't they?
Well, yes. Well, it's a rug. That's what it's for. So.
At least you can have a go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what. Whoops. So I'm doing this one in stripes. Sorry, I'm talking to the thing. I'm doing this one in stripes, but you can do them with randomly, or you can do them with a picture or shapes, circles, squares, zigzags, whatever you want. You've just got to decide on the colours that you want, and either find clothes that fit those colours, or make a pattern according to what clothes you've found. So I try not to go and buy fabric. I find that there's usually, if you ask around, people have got enough stuff to cut up. The only boring part of the whole thing is cutting the pieces of cloth to start with. That can take an awful long time. And it takes, even on a tiny mat like this one, you're probably talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, well, it'll be best part of 30 by the time. 30 by 50, you're probably talking, well, you're certainly talking over 1,000 pieces that you need, even for one this tiny. And so it's the time it takes that can be a problem for people, but it's certainly easy to do. It gets harder when you get towards the end of the row, because there you've got the hem. In effect, there you've got the turned over bit, and that means that you're going through 2 layers. And when you get into the corner, you're going through 4 layers. It's not the end of the world, but it does make it a bit harder, and you really want to pick the things that are going to go through easier. Don't pick the bits that you know are going to stick. Some fabric goes through easier than others. And this fleece is good, but when it's you can use even the stuff that's got transfers on it. But when you do, the transfers are a little bit harder to pull through. They don't bend quite as easily as the fabric without the transfers. But if you imagine that doing this years ago, I'll do it from the other end. If you do it imagine doing this years ago, and you were cutting up old coats and trousers, that was what was available and used. That bit is not going to go through that double piece. I shall get rid of that bit, and I shall get an easier piece, a piece that wants to go through more easily. There we are. And so it's only because it's double at the end. I could persevere, but I can't be bothered. There we are. One more, and then this double row that I've got going here is all finished, and I shall have to come up with another colour then, seeing as I'm striping it. So I'll put all this green away, and I have a bag here with all sorts of cut up bits I have. And I think blue, we haven't had, let's see how many blue I can find. Got to have a bit of variety always. And although traditionally because you were cutting up things like coats and old skirts, trousers, it would be a lot less, you'd have a lot more boring colours, unless you were very lucky. You would tend to have a lot of browns and things like that. Okay, let's start another row. Make sure that looked okay on the back. Yeah, it's all right. Doesn't have to be straight. It's fine. So now then, have I got enough blue to do a double row, or do I need to do it single? I shall do a single row and find out. this is double at this side, but it's much easier to pull through because this is an old cut up top that I had, and it was very thin. So it's so much easier to pull through than the fleece, which, again, fleece is lovely. And this is maybe a bit on the very thin side, but it will do. You can't really do denim because denim won't pull through hardly at all. It doesn't bend properly. And cotton shirt material, not so much because it's very thin. You can, with very thin fabric, do 2 bits through at once, which helps, but I've been wobbling. I'm afraid that every time so you've probably got a very wobbly pattern, because when it's not so bad now, but when I was pulling the fleece through, it's a bit harder when you wobble the table. But I would say this is the craft for people who can't do crafts. It would traditionally have been done by people who'd been out at work all day, fields and factories, or they'd been doing housework all day, and they were tired, and they were doing it more than likely in winter when they hadn't got much light, and they certainly wouldn't have decent light. They could do this by candlelight or lamplight or even just firelight. And the whole family could get involved because the children could cut up the fabric and the adults could stick it on could pull it through Hessian weave. And then you've got the only sort of floor covering that families could generally afford. So I'm always surprised by how, I don't suppose I should be surprised, but how widespread the use of this sort of rug was. People from all over the country come and they say, oh yes, I remember. My granny had some of those, or we used to help my nan make those or something. And particularly anywhere working class families were hard up and obviously wanted something on the floor. I should think if you had a baby and you couldn't afford a hearth rug, so you made one like this, give somewhere for your baby to lie. And if you were getting out of bed and having one side of your bed, it made it a lot pleasanter in the morning. They always say that you would make one every year, collect any old clothes for the whole year that really couldn't be used again, cut them up in the winter, and then you'd probably have the new one as the hearth rug in the main room, and the one that had been in the hearth rug would go to the side of the bed, and then to the side of the kids' bed, and they would move around the house until they ended up in the dog's bed. And finally you'd compost them because they were made out of man-made fibres. These aren't, although the base is natural. All the fabrics that you cut up now are they wouldn't compost. But it's finding a good use for them. It's better than them going to landfill. Just got to get some more pieces out of my snips bag. Snips is what they used to call these pieces of fabric. The caring for the rugs is fairly simple. You took them out and shook them, or hung them over a line and beat them with a carpet beater, and that gets most of the stuff out. You can wash them, but I'm not in a washing machine because I don't think that would do either the rug or the washing machine much good. But they do. You can wash them. I've washed mine in the bath and then put a clothes horse in there, an era, whatever you want to call it, in the bath and pulled it over that to drain. Don't do it very often because they're so heavy. There's such a lot of fabric in this that by the time you're done, if you get it wet, you've got an awful lot of weight. That's why I wouldn't put it in a washing machine, because the weight would kill the washing machine. But it doesn't actually need washing mostly, any more than you frequently than you wash your shampoo your carpet. Now, I think I'm going to have to take those out again, because I've just come. I like to try and keep in a straight line. I'm not keeping in a straight line, so they are easy enough to pull out while they're like this. Once you get the whole rug done, it's amazing how well they stay in. Even the thinner things, you really have to be quite firm to pull them out. Because once you've got them made, they last for years, because they're so thick. And the weight when you walk on them is distributed across the lumps of on the back. You don't have to do them as close together or as long as or anything as this. I like mine to be big and squashy. Otherwise, might as well go and buy a rug nowadays. These are fun. And if you make them yourself, nice and cheap, so you don't have to worry too much. If you get fed up with them, you can throw them away without worrying. If you've gone and bought a rug, it costs a fortune. Not so much. Let me find some more of those blue bits. And you can certainly do this craft while talking to someone or listening to something on the radio or watching the television even with half an eye. You will find things that say exactly how big these snips are supposed to be. I say they need to be about that wide and about that long, vaguely. Really, it's not that fussy. if you imagine a whole load of children cutting them up, they weren't going to be that fussy about exactly the sizes of them. The longer they are, the thicker your finished rug's going to be, but then you're going to have to find a lot more fabric. So you need to use a lot less if you don't make them so long or so wide or so close together. I find particularly they need to be things that are very thin need to be closer together, because it's the force of the weave of the hessian you're putting it on that keeps everything in. The fleece can stay in by itself because of it being quite thick, but thinner stuff like this needs to be pushing against each other. So I think I'll do, I don't know if I've got enough for another row of this mottled blue stuff. If I haven't, well, even if I have, I'll probably go for pink next.